Hello everyone, and welcome back to Introduction to OPCloud. In today's session, we're going to present our new feature, how to create a new model using OPCloud Wizard. This new feature is aimed for your newly OPM, only now starting to create models. So it will be helping you both to create the model correctly and also give you a little bit of understanding about OPM methodology and the things that are needed for a diagram in OPM. Please note that this is the system diagram, the top level of the model. Later on, you will be able to continue and develop your model as you see fit. This wizard will not cover all the options that OPCloud can offer and all the options that you can do with an OPM diagram. And of course, there are some limitations. All of that in order for you to create this model as nicely as you can with a tightly understanding of what needs to be done in it. So later on, when you will doing it yourself or enhancing it, you will know what to do. So let's see how we create a new model using the wizard. If you go to the main menu, you will see that we have the new model by wizard option. Clicking on it, you will get our new welcome and wizard option. As you can see, this is stage 1 out of 12, and we will go over them and see how we can create a model. For today's demonstration, we will use it to create our own star system, as you can see also in the examples. It will not be the same, but it will be close enough for us to understand how to use the wizard and to understand how OPM works. So let's start. The first thing is to understand that we have the motivation to understand, to get in the system diagram all the needed options, the process, the objects, what connects to what and why. And in the wizard itself, we have our feature of hover here to get a new understanding, some assistant, and so on. So if you see a bold thing, you can hover on top of it, and then you will be able to get the hint and help that you want to do. The first thing that we want to create is the main system process, the main system function. As you can see, you will be able to read it for yourself. I don't need to read it for you. And please remember that in OPM, we're using ing at the end of a process because it is an action. It is something that really happens. So for our own star system, we are using the main functionality, which is the driver rescuing. So with that, we can see that we don't need to maintain the uppercase and lowercase. OPCloud will do it for us later on. The next stage is to define the beneficiary of our system. We don't develop our system just for fun. We do it for someone to gain benefit, the stakeholders. As you can see, there is the main definition of a stakeholder. And we want to know who is the beneficiary of the system. And in our case, it's the driver. He is the main beneficiary. If we want to have several, we need to use plural. And then in OPM for inhuman, we're using set, and for humans, we use group. The next step is to define the relative attribute that we gain from that system. So the main attribute we get is that the driver danger status. And here it's a little bit tricky, and you can think of the main attribute you can get, for example, the safety level or things like that. And each system has its own beneficiary for the stakeholder. So once we define it, and then we want to know what is change. So our change is from endangered. To safe. This is what the main functionality of our system doing. The next step is to define the system handlers. Now, the system handlers are a human or a human group that enable the process. The beneficiary may also be a handler, but it doesn't mean that he is the only one or she is the only one that using that system. So in our case, the driver is indeed involved in our system or may be involved. So we click on the yes. And then we can add more enablers. In our case, it's the OnStar advisor. Now, once I've finished to add the first enabler, I click enter, and then I can add more enablers. We currently limit it for 3 handlers. Later on, you can always add more and see what needs to be connected to what. This is the basic things in order to help you to get started. Let's move on. Now we have the system name. Most of the time, the best thing is to take the main functionality and add system at the end, because the main functionality of the system is the purpose of it. It's the essence of it. So in our case, we can call it driver rescuing system, but since it's a specific example, we'll take the OnStar system name. We move on, and here we have the system toolset. System toolsets are the things that help us to perform our process functionality, as you can see here. And in our case, it may be the GPS that the car needs and the cellular network. And now we need to think about, wait a minute, are those physical or they're not physical? So the cellular network as an information, it shouldn't be physical. But the GPS by itself is physical. So we can check it and we can see it. If I would check both of them, I will see both of them. I can decide a not. And then we can, again, move to the next stage. We are almost done. We're already at stage 9. Now, aside from the system tools, we also have the process itself has the input and the output. So here in the main input, we want to put what the system gets. It may be something that the system, the process itself needs in order to kickstart, in order to start the performing, to get the initial data, or something that it will use and change, and that we'll see in the next stage. But in our case, our system starts with a crash, unfortunately. So we'll add crash. We can add more if we need to, but currently we don't need to. Let's hit the next, and now we can see what's the main output. First of all, is the output also an input? Maybe it's changes, maybe it's a state like we had before. In our case, the crash itself is not affected. But what's the main output? It's dispatching help, right? So let's add the help dispatched. It depends, of course, on the case itself, and this is what the main system later on will have conditions and so on, but currently we don't need to elaborate here. It's only the bird's eye view of the system. And is the system itself creates it, affects it, changes it? In our case, the system creates it. If you want to know the difference between creates, affects, or changes, those are the differences. Now, let's continue for our almost last stage, is to define whether a thing is environmental or not. for example, here we have the something that it's interacting it and it is not affected. And in our case, the crash is environmental. It's not something that we want to do. And this is it. We're done. And the only thing left to do is click on take me to the model. And here we go. We have the nice model already here. We try to create it as nicely as we can. But of course, now that you're having your model, you can save it and then decide whether you want to add more things. For example, that the advisor should be operated here and the OnStar system here. And if you want to connect the GPS and cellular network, they are part of the OnStar system. I can now select them and connect them as part of it and make it look very nice. And also for the GPS, sorry, the OnStar system also should be physical. And then you can see that we can do whatever we want to do and continue on unfolding, in-zooming, etc., etc. I hope you have a very nice time using OPM and OPCloud and this new feature. And see you next time on our next features.